I saw you poking around in Lady Driver's lorry. She in trouble? Still better than me, I guess. Told you there's plenty of others who'd tell on her. But, is she in trouble? It's that bad. Man, what should I do? What should I do to help her? Yeah, maybe I should just keep my head down and work on my rhymes while I can. Oh, you know, Tommy Leham's gonna be a musician. Sprechgesang, but with beats. I've got a lot of free time on the road to hone my craft. Tommy Lam was taken. My real name's Jerry Lafitte. Tommy's way better.
It's more him.
Yeah, you too. Be safe, detective.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? Yes, my eyes on the harbour have sent word to that effect. What have you discovered? It doesn't really matter, and I do apologize for the surveillance. Wild Pines can't afford to be blind at a time like this.
One of the tall buildings overlooking the roundabout, most likely. That would give them a read on the entire quarter.
In any case, it's a relief to know someone has looked into it. If I may ask, will there be an official investigation? I assume you discovered there is an operation.
The lieutenant is about to interject. Cut him off. This decision should be yours.
If there is an investigation, it will be part of an ongoing operation, subject to confidentiality. I am sure you understand.
Of course, detectives. In any case, you've held up your end of our arrangement. I trust you with the rest. Now it's my turn. I wouldn't normally break protocol like this, but the situation demands it. If you don't solve this murder, I'm afraid we may have a bloodbath on our hands.
The words bloodbath sound cold in her mouth. They taste of iron and strawberries.
Yes. I'm afraid this strike may descend into a small-scale civil war, with possible consequences for all of Rivershoal West.
Since you are sharing land, this is also the RCM's worst-case scenario.
Then we're on the same page, as grim as it may be. I have an indirect role to play, I'm sad to say. My employer experienced a momentary lapse of faith in me. In that moment, they elected to deploy a private military contractor as an insurance measure. They called it my security detail. They were dispatched after I relayed the union's initial offer. Every worker a member of the board. I tried to convince my employer it was simply a piece of rhetoric and not a serious demand, but the stridency of it seems to have spooked them. Absolutely not. These mercenaries are muscle, pure and simple. They are meant to intimidate the Union into surrendering.
Who are they, exactly?
Crenell, an Oranese military company. As far as I know, 3 arrived in Martinez. They report to me sporadically, but they do not answer to me. To be frank, our relationship is deteriorating. They wear ceramic armor, have semi-automatic weapons and years of combat experience. They also have trauma and stressor disorder, and no idea how to conduct themselves in an urban civilian environment.
So, what happened?
The story is, one of them, the Colonel, I don't know his real name, sexually assaulted a local woman while he was drunk and separated from his unit. This allowed some of the more militant Union members to subdue him. He was taken out behind the whirling in rags and lynched last Sunday night. Nothing. Mr. Clare refuses to let me into the harbour. I have not been able to discuss this matter with anyone there. The remaining 2 Crenell contractors carry out their orders, for now. It's a smokescreen. In secret, they are conducting an independent military tribunal into the lynching. Once this investigation is concluded, executions will follow.
What is the nature of this so-called investigation?
Whether to execute one, some, or all of the Union militants.
It'll be all of them. The decision is already made.
It's not good, no. My only hope is that you provide a single concrete suspect before the mercenaries indiscriminately pick theirs. Simply put, if you don't pin this on someone good, and do it fast, they will identify and execute everyone present at the lynching. This in turn will force the Union to respond.
They would have to project strength and power.
The débardeurs have over 2,000 men. It will be 1,000 to 1.
Have you ever seen a hornet invade a beehive, Lieutenant? It's not pretty.
The Serai's giant hornet, the world's second largest insect, can kill 40 honeybees a minute, while a group of 30 can decimate an entire hive of 20,000 bees in less than 4 hours.
These men work in tandem using semi- and fully automatic firearms. Their armor is virtually impenetrable to muzzle-loaded weapons, even yours. Most Union workers don't have guns at all. As I said, a bloodbath. Many bleak scenarios have already come true. Nameless, badgeless detective of the citizens' militia. All we can do is keep the rest from going the same way. One single concrete suspect delivered into civil court, and I may be able to defuse this situation. Not much. Their public resume is relatively good, as far as private military contractors go. I believe they were once called Downwell. They boast a long list of clients: Saint-Baptiste, Welchman-Lorenz, Eintracht. A warning sign, however. The operations concerned all take place in third or fourth world countries. Guarding facilities, escort missions and such.
Meaning they're used to operating in war zones.
Yes. All the good conflict corridors, Supramundi, Yesut, the Seminese Islands, countries that don't have a good record reporting atrocious military conduct on their soil. Sadly, no. Before this happened, I had little interest in them. Now that I do, I don't have the resources. If you still have access to the ICP's database, you could run a better background check than I ever could. It may take some time, though.
Do you know a lot about the inner workings of the RCM and the ICP, ma'am?
In my line of work, it pays to do your research. I was prepared to deal with the RCM. I did not think I'd be dealing with a group like Crenell. I have. And they will. However, these orders take time to reach what is basically a rogue unit out in the field here. Until they do, it's all on us. Or he didn't. This is information passed on to me from some teenagers loitering around the canal. I cannot testify by it. The remaining contractors, their tribunal, it's what they believe. That the man was killed because he assaulted a local woman. I've asked around a bit. This seems to be the accepted story around Martinez.
The lieutenant consults his notebook, his eyebrows knitted in concentration.
Odd. We haven't heard any reports about an assault in connection with the lynching. Where did it take place? And when?
Last Sunday night, at the Whirling in Rags, the hostel by the gates. Supposedly, the colonel was drunk, maybe on narcotics too. Either way, he's alleged to have sexually assaulted a woman. Sometime later, a group of dock workers got their hands on him. That's a good question, officer. I don't have the slightest idea. As I said, it's a rumor about a rumor. In any case, it's what the colonel's remaining colleagues believe.
You'll meet her soon enough, you feel.
If you mean did I see him alive, yes. But I did not know him. Lely, his service name, a nom de guerre, most likely. He wouldn't divulge his full name. Only one of them did. A bad sign if there ever was one. One is a man, Corty, they call him, a nickname as well. The other a woman, Phyllis DePaul. Corty is the gunner, I believe. DePaul is a radio operator.
What would you say was his eye color, the deceased's?
She closes her eyes, trying to picture the man's face, then shakes her head.
I can't remember.
The lieutenant was testing her, asking a small detail first to see if she knew him better than she let on. She passed.
That's all right, man. Anything else? Nationality? What would you say was his age?
He was 40. Or 50. It's hard to say which. He had a combat injury on his lower jaw. It made it difficult to estimate his age, or gauge his facial expressions.
Indeed. This matches the dental reconstruction we saw on the body. What else? Nationality? Accent?
He was, Occidental, I think. Light brown hair, a mixed accent, Oranese, or Messinian, maybe. His injury gave him an accent all his own. In a way, it was humanizing. He had to learn to speak through it, through the injury. That's all I know, I guess. I only met him once. They've gone to ground, as it were. I don't recommend seeking them out. For one, they're almost certainly armed to the teeth. They don't have the same respect for the Revachol citizens' militia as I do. To put it bluntly, they think you're vigilantes. Ghetto savages. It will not be a fruitful meeting.
Vigilantes. You're a professional officer of the only legitimate authority in Revachol.
Somehow, I doubt that lecturing them on the legitimate use of force will persuade them to stand down. You're likely to run into them eventually. When that happens, I'll be in a better position to mediate if I don't appear involved.
One must be at the harbor gates, causing trouble, directing strike breakers, perhaps. You can hear the sounds of the ruckus coming from there all the time. The other has a vantage point in a building south of the roundabout. They were keeping tabs on you while you were canvassing the lorry drivers.
That may be so. I still hope you heed my advice. There's no need to kick the hornet's nest.
For all your talk of averting this catastrophe, the situation at the gate is a powder keg. Does this not bother you?
Of course it bothers me, Lieutenant. But my hands are tied. How would my employer react if it appeared I were intervening on behalf of the Union?
Your concern may be appearances. Ours is keeping the peace.
That would afford a good vantage point. In any case, it's practically inaccessible.
Where is your radio for contacting them, if I may ask? Do you have an earpiece?
Heavens no. I'm not an undercover agent. There's a shortwave at the ship's wheel. I hope I can answer it better. Until the executions start? Truthfully, I don't know. It depends on their progress identifying the members of the lynch mob, and their impatience.
They don't report their progress to you?
Not on this matter. I'm afraid they consider this a personal initiative. It's a matter of days, not weeks. I am sorry to have been the bearer of bad news. If there is anything else I can help you with, please ask.
She reaches for the photo, takes it, then holds it in her hand. For about half a minute, in silence.
It was taken with a Trigat not long ago. This is the man's upper body. There were no more markings on his hands or legs.
Her mouth is relaxed. The accordion lines near her mouth vanish. The pearls of her eyes move slowly on the photo's surface.
Sorry. I was trying to see if I can read the web of interdependencies between these points, the stars. I can't. But that's how you read this story. The points themselves don't have letters, numbers, anything. Their size, location on the body, and distance from each other tells you what they represent. Close. Port cities. This is an Oronese map of the waterways, a sailor's tattoo worn by wayfarers of the Dolorian century, over 300 years ago. The sailors would mark their bodies to map their travels. The sailor's soul would use it to fly back home if they should die abroad. This is a sort of contraption, to be reeled back in by. The silver cord, they would call it.
Where is he now?
The times have changed. Quite a few. Vredefort, the Oronese capital, traditionally stands on the right shoulder. He started somewhere near here, I think.
What next?
Then he made his way to the Pretto Grande, through what I think must be the Stutz Canal, an artificial channel through the Occident. From the Pretto, he sailed to the Insulindic Ocean, first the Semnes Islands, then this. Revachol. Those are the two constants. Vredefort on the shoulder, and Revachol in the heart. They started the tradition of these maps right after the discovery of Insulinde, at the dawn of the Interinsulary Age.
The old world passing by, and the new world already here.
You said you can't read it.
I can't. This man was no sailor, and these are no ports. I can understand geographic fragments, but not their meaning. His platoon members? The other contractors, though I do not suggest you go and show them that picture. This man was their friend. and comrade.
Surely there are other people to ask about the tattoo. This is not necessary to complete the task, officer. It's a dangerous side task. Search elsewhere.
Do what you have to do, Detective. I don't think deciphering that tattoo should come before public security, but if you should wade into the mob to find out, I couldn't stop you.
We will be careful, ma'am.
Is there anything else I can help you with? Everything. Right up to, but not including, trade secrets. First, you'd have to repeal the Emergencies Act of Trade in Aliments. That gives me the right to silence. It's quite the octopus. Good luck is only kept in place by the vested interests of half the civilized world, including your own.
What the ma'am means is that the Emergencies Act and the RCM both get their authority from the coalition government.
You'd be shooting yourself in the foot, in other words.
But I am derailing us. You wanted to know about the strike. I believe the official title is Senior Labor Negotiator. In practice, I'm a grocery clerk. I relay the union's demands to Wild Pines and return with Wild Pines' counteroffer.
And how are the talks going?
They're not. That's the problem. The union stopped all negotiations a week ago, after that awful lynching took place. Now they won't even let me into the harbor. There's a 2-meter-20 racist behemoth blocking the gates. What can I say? The union employs a giant covered in tattoos. A racist giant. I guess that's part of their big tent organization now. Let's say I was not making the kind of progress I'd hoped for when I first arrived.
And when did you first arrive?
I arrived 3 weeks ago. Yes, in the middle of February. The bay was still partially frozen then. I prefer to do these things on site, like the RCM.
But the strike began in December.
I wasn't the original negotiator here. I took over after Mr. Gaumont hit a wall with Mr. Clare, the union boss. Mr. Clare refused to speak with Gaumont despite concessions he'd granted the union in prior negotiations.
This isn't the first time the union has gone on strike.
Heavens no. There have been 2 prior strikes. Both times the union won significant concessions, including overtime pay and a medical plan. This time their demands are more, I guess you could say, aggressive. Mr. Clare told him to... how did he put it? Fuck off, midget. Gaumont is short of stature, you see. Keep in mind, this is a negotiator Mr. Clare has worked with before, and who was more than fair with him and the union.
Sounds like usual aggressive posturing.
There are leaflets everywhere, and banners. What did they say again? Oh yes. Every worker, a member of the board.
Most of the workers probably don't know what that means.
In its defense, another said, demand democracy. Pretty tame stuff compared to every worker, a member of the board. It's quite simple, you see. Every time the Wild Pines group makes a decision, about what? About anything really, it needs the signature of each of the 2,200 workers in its Martinez terminal. Just so you understand, this is but one of 22 terminals owned by Wild Pines. Essentially, not only are they kings of the company, they are also kings of the 72,000 employees of Wild Pines Group. That may well be. It's not up to me to decide who is king, but as negotiations go, it's not a swell start. I'm not sure. Naturally, I assume that was just their opening position, a hard-nosed tactic with a side of mockery. But there's been no follow-up, just the same nonsensical slogan repeated over and over again. And now, people are getting lynched, I hear. Behind the whirling in rags. A disastrous situation if there ever was one.
Excuse me, from whom did you hear about this lynching?
I first heard it from the boyar at the gates. The one whose very name advertises his aversion to work. I think he said it was, "Call me mañana."
This checks out.
The scabs? You mean the huddled masses of Jamrock, come to plead for work where the Union refuses to? Yes, they were organized by Wild Pines. The contractors picked them up from Jamrock and drove them over. This is standard practice. The company reserves the right to man its stations. Everard Clare is a man of the utmost integrity. If you can say one thing about him, it's that he always puts the interests of the workers first. Of course not. Everard is fantastically corrupt. I imagine he has a thick, viscous goo where you and I have blood. He is the most corrupt individual I have ever seen, and I deal with men like him for a living. If there is anyone more venal, more irredeemably nepotistic, then it's his twin brother, Edgar. Yes, Edgar looks exactly like his brother, except for that lazy eye. He also talks exactly like Everard does, and when one's term as foreman is up, the other takes over. It's how they circumvent the term limits, you see, with a funny little switcheroo. While in office, they've embezzled God knows how much of their workers' dues. The Débardeurs Union was once a perfectly normal institution. 20 years ago, anyway. It must not have been easy to establish under the Emergency Act, but they did it. I can respect that. Organized labor at its best, as they say. Then something happened in the local chapter elections. The brothers Clare came and transformed it into a... how do you say?
A mob. The Débardeurs are a crime syndicate. Sad as it may be, I suspect we'll be forced to cooperate with them.
Refreshingly honest, officer. The company has tried appeasing in the past, but I'm afraid our concessions have only emboldened Everard and his brother. And your opinion, detective, if I may ask? I'm a curious and talkative person, you see. Would you say the Débardeurs Union is... Thank you for being candid. Sadly, Wild Pines have cooperated with what amounts to a crime syndicate for 2 decades. However much you feed the wolf always hungers. I'm glad you asked. There was a woman, the previous forewoman of the Union. She disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes. On the last day of the local chapter elections, her daughter phoned in and said she wasn't running anymore, or coming to work. Ever. End of story. Downright haunting, if you ask me. The Wild Pines suspected foul play, but what could they do? It was a union matter. The point of the presentation is, these kinds of things happen around the Clares. Watch out when you're dealing with him.
Thank you for your concern, ma'am. We'll be just fine.
Of course. How else can I help? More lessons in basic reality? My favorite part of the day. Go ahead, ask me anything. These are unimportant times, Detective. You and I were born after the dust had settled. 1,000th of a second too late. For the big time.
The smile of a predator. No doubt what she's got in mind.
All men are predators, dear. Nothing much to be done about that. It's all a matter of where you get to file your teeth. The revolution. It's quite easy. Every 100 years or so, our species gets together to decide what's next, who gets shot in the head, and who gets the mineral rights. It's a real kerfuffle. Why, of course. We're talking Duke Out Central, full swing intraspecies warfare. No, I would say the apes were neutral. On the other hand, maybe you're right. Those would be the communists. Generally speaking, 40 million people got shot in the head during the World Revolution. But the communists, they all got shot in the head. Oh, and the anarchists too. They shot them well. So well, one forgets they even existed.
She likes the totality of it.
Indeed. They piled them in mass graves in Ozon. And, well, that's the last anyone heard of those people. Did they ever? Before they got shot themselves, they shot 2 million people.
Yeah, it was a kerfuffle, all right.
Yes, the Insulindian deluge, they call it. Yes, an acute thiamine deficiency can be exacerbated by alcoholism. Exacerbated means made worse. Oh, lots of people. Even the king got shot in the head, or thrown beneath a horse, or drowned. Accounts differ. It was unceremonious. Just as well, he wasn't actually the king. Just the king's nephew. The real king abdicated and lived out a long and productive life as a venture capitalist in Grad. Yes, King Guillaume had a nose for bad PR. He ran before it. What is the expression? Went down? Anyway, Gil got out alive and his nephew Frisell got shot in his place. Him and tens of thousands of his wonderfully fascist kingsmen. It was a wild time. The liberals got the mineral rights. And by mineral rights, I mean everything. Liberals are usually middle-class people, Detective. Or the remaining gentry. The beneficiaries of the pre-revolutionary arrangement. Some were rich enough to stay with the Constitution, with monarchy. Big mistake. Others bet on the revolution. They were called the ultras, or ultra-liberals. They fared well. They didn't win so much as survive. We were the last ones standing when the war ended. Everyone else got shot in the head, remember?
We. She's one of them. Of course.
To foreign intervention. The coalition. Those people really took the mineral rights. The liberals took everything that wasn't nailed to the ground. The coalition took the ground. The ocean, the laws, and the people. The coalition of nations. Grad, Mesk, Vesper, Messina, Oranje, and Sur-la-Clay. The armed center of the world. They landed here and ended the revolution. It was the moralist thing to do.
There is bitterness in her voice, tempered with understanding. She is critical, but ultimately understands the cause.
The moralists believe in keeping everything exactly the way it is. They believe in mineral rights, and not shooting people in the head. At least not in the same manner and volume as the others do. They are the long-standing provisional rulers of Revachol now, the coalition government.
The rulers of Revachol, and also the world. These guys are strong.
This is their zone of control. They embolden the RCM with crumbs of the same law they took. Technically speaking, you are a moralist.
The color of moralism is blue. The official motto of Moral Intern, or Moralist International, is a blue forget-me-not, a piece of grey sky. Unofficial. For a moment, there was hope.
A devout man of the center. Hard to come by. It's good to have someone who takes a moderate approach to head shooting. In your line of work, I mean. The turn of the century revolution? Don't answer it. It's a trick question. The revolution began in '02 on the Isla of Grad, though by the end, nearly the whole world had gotten involved. It wasn't a who, but a what. A pandemic of Zarat, a particularly virulent prion disease, which the authorities in Grad proved unable to contain. Then Mazov came along and overthrew the government. It made people overthrow their governments. Of course not. It was a highly infectious microorganism that destroyed brain tissue. The actual causes of the revolution were material. The pandemic only provided the spark. From Revachol and Grad? Not far. The world managed to cauterize itself. Mazov's government was overthrown in '08, and the coalition crushed the Revachol commune 2 years later. It was the end. Why? You and I, officer. Our lives in the zone of control.
Something tells you her life and yours are not that similar. Maybe it's because she has a boat and you have that necktie? A pair of pants?
No doubt. But we share the same time and position on the planet's crust. That counts for more than you think. A city-state divided into free market zones under the everlasting interregnum of the Coalition of Nations. And you, of course, the citizens' militia.
The clatter of typewriter keys fills the main hall of the reappropriated silk mill. Precinct 41. Chad Tilbrook presses enter. Outside, Officer Elfboy Williams slams the door of an armored motor carriage.
The zone of control is the third incarnation of Revachol, after the failure of the suzerain and the commune. Modernity. They developed the marvels of the inter-Islary communication, telematic milieus, radiation, colored plastics. Meanwhile, in Revachol West, the aftermath continues for the 5th decade.
51 minus 8 equals 43.
Time flies. The 20s saw a decade of urban war, west of the river leveled, offshore platforms in flames. Still, it's regarded as an improvement on what came before. '08 to '19 was simply hell. The 30s? Things settled down in the 30s. Revachol East transformed itself into the world's largest tax haven, with the international community's blessing. For the first time in a long time, it seemed like things were going somewhere. No, it was a market mirage fueled by cocaine and quantitative easing. The 40s dispelled it like a cold splash, an Isla-wide hangover, you might say. And here we are. Welcome to reality, baby.
For her to be where she is, Wild Pines Group must have picked the right side.
They picked the winning side. That's why they're here, and others are not. Perhaps it wouldn't have turned out that way had I been in charge. I might have bet on the king and led the Pines to doom. I would have sided with the cannons, If you'd seen the calibers of the things, you might have too. Perhaps it's better I was born when I was. 10 of the 14 Indo tribes got it wrong. Feld, Kupri, Tricentennial. So I suppose I would have been in good company. Good question. What would you have done differently? And I asked you, past-less detective of the Citizens Militia, what insight has acute encephalopathy given to you?
Here's some wisdom, lady. Say the death thing.
I see. A tenth of humanity. The key of history is in the lock. Keep turning at any cost. Past. That's what de Briever, the leader of the Communards, said, before she got a bullet in her head. Don't get me wrong. Capital is finished. But understand this. Its end won't free anyone. It will only lead to more suffering.
Opinions expressed here do not reflect the official position of the RCM.
And what is your official position, Lieutenant?
My position, ma'am? My parents got ripped to shreds in the revolution. I would have gone the same way. I was saved by being 2 years old. That's my position. The abattoir.
Understandable. They are what they are. Who knows? An afterbloom may yet come. Anyway, enough sentimentality. Is there anything else you want to know?
Not so fast. Who is she in all this? Ask her who she is. She owes you an answer. She won't maneuver her way out of this one.
I am the vilest of the vile. A traitor. A devourer of nations and infants. I am an ultra.
It's sharp.
No, not like me. I am the nether creature of the Forbidden Swamp who pushed the king under a shitwagon and betrayed the revolution. Are you liberated enough to offer up your home on a plate for financial colonists? No, I think not. Tell me, now that I've uncoiled myself, do you find me frightening?
In her green eyes you see a mixture of truth and self-satire. Decades of guilt and pride.
A fitting punishment, to be forgotten, if not forgiven. Save a prayer for us in our chateaus on Ozon and in Stella Maris. When the dust settled, the Liberals were the only ones left to clean up the mess. By virtue of their survival, they were handed enormous power to shape the future. This was all our last generation managed. With due respect to our overlords, the eternal caretaker government that keeps Martinez a monument to the efficacy of its artillery, I would not have relinquished sovereignty to the Coalition. Not here in Martinez, and not in the Stella Maris or Delta Beachheads either, if not for my own sake. Then for my daughters, we had an obligation to defend our sovereignty. We should have burned the whole Isla down rather than let them have it.
Dark orange flames reflect in her green eyes. An oil fire on the ocean.
Perhaps. My intellectual vanity will be my undoing.
You're no dummy yourself. the crown on your head as you lay in the casket.
Yes, I suppose I am. But I wouldn't be a patriot anywhere but here.
Seditious talk, man.
Yes. Whatever else I am, I'm also a mother and a wife. Now, shall we return to reality? It's a neurological disorder caused by a lack of vitamin B in the brain. Symptoms include a retrograde amnesia. It's quite serious. You should get yourself checked out.
She conveys it in short, cold bursts, trying not to invest too deeply in the condition of this doomed detective. In case he goes down later, souring the entire portfolio.
It's not just me, Detective. All of Martinez has placed its chips on your success. I pray we've all bet wisely. Well, it's either bariatric surgery or long-term alcohol use.
Yes, and perform autoerotic asphyxiation on yourself with your funny necktie, out in the open somewhere.
It remains a mystery what you mean by this something close. This isn't about you. It's about reality.
A bird? A sphenicid? A flightless bird of the polar regions? Ah! This is the pier of Rue de Saint-Ghislain, 33A, where the tenants have been kind enough to rent me a slot. Or two. A pre-revolutionary tenement. Old buildings are called tenements, you see. And new buildings, bâtiments. After les bâtiments nouveaux. But 33A and 33B are not nouveaux. They're old. This one used to be 8 to 10 stories tall. A real high-rise by the standards of the last century. Built to mirror the skyscrapers across the bay in the Delta. That was before the war, of course. Mostly the urban middle class, I believe. This was once primo real estate, before the cannons lopped 4 or 5 stories off. Splat, splat.
You could be wrong, but from here it appears as if she's running the brush across her throat in a soaring motion.
Wonderful. The girl in the old lady rags looks like a sullen and rebellious member of a teen infraculture. Yes, you and I belong to the supraculture. We're common, the herd. The music on the radio, the food in the chain restaurant, those are all too popular for the girl in the old lady rags. She prefers a fantasy world, an infraculture with its own dress code and vernacular. It is an illusion, I'm afraid. There is no refuge from the supraculture. I can't. That's how simple it is. One may dye their hair green and wear their grandma's coat, all they want. Capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself. Even those who would critique capital end up reinforcing it instead. All right. What next?
Suddenly, you're not so sure you're part of the supraculture.
And what would that be? I can see that, yes. I dabbled in those dark arts myself, not so long ago. I assure you, it was a thoroughly supracultural phenomenon. All permeating. Downright mandatory. Nothing infra about disco, baby. Those days are long behind me. And even in the early 30s, I would say I was more of a new girl. Disco was a minor, but still enjoyable facet of the whole thing for me. The new, a cultural era, and the name of the decade it ravished, the 30s. It came out of post-revolutionary Revachol. It was ultra-liberal. It involved lots of partying, as you might imagine, and champagne-colored everything. By the looks of it, that would have been when you came of age. Now, wasn't it Guillaume Le Million who said, if you can remember the new, you weren't there?
For some reason, your mind is a veritable repository of Guillaume Le Million lyrics, trivia, and B-sides. But the time to explore this is when you're alone, facing a mirror perhaps. Right now, it would derail the reality lowdown. What is all of this? The scent, the sound, the air.
What world? The only one, I suppose. The world of matter. And its pale antipode.
The camera of her mind glides over the surface of the water.
Great bodies of water. Forest-covered surfaces. Clusters of light where the cities lie. You've seen the montage. We all have. This world is enough. There is a term of endearment they coined for it in the DeLorean century, when humanity was high on this world, discovering more and more of it, these archipelagos included. Elysium. Not in this case, no. That sounds more like something the Mesk petro-fascists might say.
The Confederate Republic of Mesk, the world's largest state by territory, has fallen into an especially nihilistic strain of nationalism lately.
It isn't enough to call us animals. Even animals aren't animals. They're like you and I suppose. Living organisms don't identify with abstractions. Elysium is for particular beings. It does. There are those who would call it hell. A term of hatred that originates, like many such things, with the Mesk petro-fascists. Oh, you want a picture of the world? There is no complete set yet, dear. They're having some trouble reaching orbit. Great things are difficult to achieve. For now, we're viewing the world from the inside, sideways. That's looking less and less likely, Detective. You wouldn't know it from the tabloids, but the ORG nations have been launching weather balloons into the lower ionosphere since the 30s.
ORG, Occident Revachol Grad.
There's a steadily increasing trickle of images. Between the big three, they're piecing together a dark grey corona. Yes. Pale covers 72% of the surface. There are grey flares and prominences, even arcs above entire isolas. The images are blurry, but if there was a sphere in there, it certainly looks like it fractured a long time ago.
A cold fear seeps into you.
You seem to be spooked. Please don't be. They say there is a rarefied envelope of matter surrounding the darkened disk of our planet. That is, if we are still living on a planet. Or, to speak more plainly, imagine vast swathes of land disrupted by nothingness. I am sorry, dear. It must sound quite terrifying through the acute encephalopathy. Even scientific positivism isn't entirely convinced about what we're dealing with here. But this is one of the greatest questions of our time. Maybe when they get the complete set together, it will jolt us out of our rut, bring us together, however naive it may sound. You have misimagined it. I don't have the power to convey to you the effect and geometry of the images that depict our world from below low orbit. It's like the crowning of the world. It's insane. Very disco. You'd love it. See? Everyone finds something worth holding on to in this world, however wasted its opportunities.
Suddenly, you're conscious of yourself standing there, on whatever this all is. Your arms hang down by your sides. The lieutenant observes you both, silently. He adjusts his glasses.